guys. We're going to keep going on book the second, Chiaroscuro of the Tale of Despereaux. Today we're going to read chapters 19 through 21. And again, I will pause after each chapter for you to think about what the VIP would be of that chapter. Chapter 19 is called Light, Light Everywhere. Imagine, if you will, having spent the whole of your life in a dungeon. Imagine that late one spring day you step out of the dark and into a world of bright windows and polished floors, winking copper pots, shining suits of armor, and tapestries sewn in gold. Imagine. And while you are imagining things, imagine this too. Imagine that at the same time the rat steps from the dungeon and into the castle, a mouse is being born upstairs. A mouse reader who is destined to meet the light bedazzled rat. But that meeting will occur much later. And for now, the rat is nothing but happy, delighted, amazed to find himself standing in so much light. "I," said Rescuro, spinning dizzily from one bright thing to the next, "I will never leave. No, never. I will never go back to the dungeon. Why would I? I will never torture another prisoner. It is here that I belong." The rat waltzed happily from room to room until he found himself at the door to the banquet hall. He looked inside and saw gathered there King Philip, Queen Rosemary, the Princess P, 20 noble people, a juggler, 4 minstrels, and all the king's men. This party, reader, was a sight for a rat's eyes. Rescuro had never seen happy people. He had only known the miserable ones. Gregory the jailer, and those who were consigned to his domain did not laugh or smile or clink glasses with the person sitting next to them. Rescuro was enchanted. Everything glittered. Everything. The gold spoons on the table, and the jingle bells on the juggler's cap, the strings on the minstrel's guitars, and the crowns on the king's and the queen's heads. And the little princess. How lovely she was. How much like light itself. Her gown was covered in sequins that winked and glimmered at the rat. And when she laughed, and she laughed often, everything around her seemed to glow brighter. "Oh, really," said Rescuro. "This is too extraordinary. This is too wonderful. I must tell Botticelli that he was wrong. Suffering is not the answer. Light is the answer." And he made his way into the banquet hall. He lifted his tail off the ground and held it at an angle and marched in time to the music the minstrels were playing on their guitars. The rat reader invited himself to the party. So now you guys can stop and think, what was the VIP of that chapter? And if you have not already written it down, then that is something you need to add to your book, The Second VIPs. Chapter 20 is called The View from a Chandelier. Now I want to remind you again of what a chandelier is. It's a very ornate light that you see oftentimes over tables. So kind of looks like candles a little bit. It's very, very pretty. A lot of times there's crystals and things involved, especially if you find a chandelier in a castle. There was in the banquet hall a most beautiful and ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table and the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What better place to view all this glory, all this beauty? There was so much laughing and singing and juggling that no one noticed as Rescuro climbed up a table leg and onto the table, and from there flung himself onto the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below him. The smells of the food, the sound of the music, and the light, the light, the light. Amazing, unbelievable. Rescuro smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier for only so long before he is discovered. This would be true at even the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was that spotted him? You're right. The sharp-eyed Princess P. "A rat!" she shouted. "A rat is hanging from the chandelier." The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating. The man with the jingle cap was juggling and jingling. No one, in the midst of all this merriment, heard the P. No one except Rescuro. Rat. He had never before been aware of what an ugly word it was. Rat. In the middle of all that beauty, it immediately became clear that it was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light. And not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Rescuro realize that he did not like being a rat, that he did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Rescuro with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat, reader, fell. And alas, he fell right directly into the queen's bowl of soup. Jot your VIP from that chapter. We have one last chapter for this reading, and it's chapter 21, The Queen's Last Words. The queen loved soup. She loved soup more than anything in the world except for the Princess P and the king. And because the queen loved it, soup was served in the castle for every banquet, every lunch, and every dinner. And what soup it was! Cook's love and admiration for the queen and her palate moved the broth that she concocted from the level of a mere food to a high art. On this particular day, for this particular banquet, Cook had outdone herself. The soup was a masterwork, a delicate mingling of chicken, watercress, and garlic. Rescuro, as he surfaced from the bottom of the queen's capacious bowl, could not help taking a few appreciative sips. "Oh, lovely," he said, distracted for a moment from the misery of his existence. "Delightful." "See," shouted the P. "See!" She stood. She pointed her finger right at Rescuro. "It is a rat. I told you that it was a rat. He was hanging from the chandelier, and now he is in Mama's soup." The musicians stopped playing their guitars. The jugglers stopped juggling. The noble people stopped eating. The queen looked at Rescuro. Rescuro looked at the queen. Reader, in the spirit of honesty, I must utter a difficult and unsavory truth. Rats are not beautiful creatures. They are not even cute. They are really rather nasty beasts, particularly if one happens to appear in your bowl of soup with pieces of watercress clinging to his whiskers. There was a long moment of silence, and then Rescuro said to the queen, "I beg your pardon." In response, the queen flung her spoon in the air and made an incredible noise. A noise that was in no way worthy of a queen, a noise somewhere between the neigh of a horse and the squeal of a pig, a noise that sounded something like this. And then she said, "There is a rat in my soup." The queen was really a simple soul, and always her whole life had done nothing except state the overly obvious. She died as she lived. "There is a rat in my soup" were the last words she uttered. She clutched her chest and fell over backward. Her royal chair hit the floor with a thump, and the banquet hall exploded. Spoons were dropped. Chairs were flung back. "Save her!" thundered the king. "You must save her!" All the king's men ran to try and rescue the queen. Rescuro climbed out of the bowl of soup. He felt that under the circumstances, it would be best if he left. As he crawled across the tablecloth, he remembered the words of the prisoner in the dungeon, his regret that he did not look back at his daughter as he left her. And so Rescuro turned. He looked back, and he saw that the princess was glaring at him. Her eyes were filled with disgust and anger. "Go back to the dungeon," was what the look she gave him said. "Go back into the darkness where you belong." This look, reader, broke Rescuro's heart. Did you think that rats do not have hearts? Wrong. All living things have a heart, and the heart of any living thing can be broken. If the rat had not looked over his shoulder, perhaps his heart would not have broken, and it is possible then that I would not have a story to tell. But reader, he did look. VIP for that chapter. Make sure you have that jotted down, and we will finish book the second next time.